There.
Good morning, folks. Here we are, another beautiful Sunday morning. We're grateful that we're able to be together in sort of whatever capacity that we can be, and we're grateful for the opportunity to share the gospel this morning. This weekend has been a beautiful weekend. It's one in which we sort of get out and enjoy the weather, and for some of us doing some work that I've been sitting down during these sermons because it's easier to focus and all like that. But this morning I'm sitting down because it kind of hurts too much to stand up after all the work we did outside yesterday, getting in wood and everything. But we're grateful for the opportunity, that's for sure. This morning I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about changes that have occurred and sort of what we're in the midst of right now. Most of us, at least this is my case, we don't mind change as long as everything stays the same. But we know that that's not true. And when you consider all of the changes that have occurred in the last 100 years, for instance, in our world, going from horse-drawn wagons to men on the moon and space stations and things like that, from telegraph, which was a huge thing, to virtual intelligence and all of the things that we're able to do these days. We've gone from typewriters to computers that we hold in the palm of our hand. I was talking to someone recently about typewriters and the typing class we took in high school, and yes, I'm old enough that I took typing class on a manual typewriter where the keys moved about that far when you pressed them down. But we've gone in terms of technology so far, and technology is a wonderful thing, and it's done a great deal of good for mankind. Diseases that in years past would have meant certain death are now easily controlled by vaccines and medicines and antibiotics and this type of thing. Of course, in our current situation, we see that even that technology is imperfect. We see that travel time has been drastically shortened. Sometimes if we travel by air and we leave one city and we're on the other coast in 4 hours, it's hard for us to realize that that journey may have taken 4 months in days past. Our lives are generally made easier by the number of things that are now scientifically possible. And I think it's easy to understand why people have a certain degree of confidence in science. I hear right now so many people say, well, listen to the science. Listen to the science about this. Listen to the science about that. Unfortunately, you've got scientific truths, quote unquote, on either side of an issue. So science can be certainly subjective according to how we want to approach it. Many people believe that God cannot provide them for anything that they cannot find in technology. We no longer need religion because now we have science. It's kind of the watchword of the day. I think it's best, I heard this expression some time back. It said, earlier generations prayed for a bountiful harvest, but now we just put out more fertilizer. We think we can control it. We don't need to go through the process of prayer. We can just handle it ourselves. It's almost, for many people, believe that faith and that religion belong to the childhood of humanity, the youth of humanity. But now, as an adult in society, we have replaced that with something more useful, something better, something more tangible. But I think the question that we have to ask is, if we look at that, is, are we better off than previous generations? have we overcome the basic enemies of life in this world? Have we overcome war between nations, racial strife, family breakdowns, the fundamental evil nature of mankind? No, we have not. We are still faced with those things. And what good is it to have a better telephone, to have a $1,000 cell phone, if the only things we hear across it are words of harsh rhetoric between people, or animosity or hatred? I mean, we've only changed the medium, but not the message. The myth of a better life, I think, is proving false for so many people, and people realizing we need something besides just knowledge and besides technology and science. If we're going to introduce meaning and order and substance into our lives, technology, materialism, all those things that we have leaned the ladder of our lives on have sort of left a bitter taste in the mouths of so many people, and there's a missing element in our lives, in so many lives, I think, in the world today. And that missing element is Jesus Christ. In his letter to the church at Corinth, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, beginning in verse 18, says, "For to those who are perishing, the message of the gospel is foolishness, but to us who are being saved, it is God's power. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and I will set aside the understanding of the experts. Where is the philosopher? Where is the scholar? Where is the debater of this age? Hasn't God made the world's wisdom foolish? For since in God's wisdom the world did not know God through wisdom, God was pleased to save those who believe through the foolishness of the message preached. For the Jews ask for signs and the Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. Yet to those who are called, both Jew and Greek, Christ is God's power and God's wisdom, because God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength." The folly of the cross. That's what Paul is speaking about here. He understood, I think, the struggle we are facing, not the technology or the discussion that we're having there, but rather he understood that the message of the cross, the truth of that, the simplicity of that, is foolishness to those who do not believe. That is why so many, I think, people through the years have turned to cults, to false teachers, to perverted beliefs, to things that make it appear more palatable, more in line with what human understanding is. Because if you look at the message of the cross in and of itself, without faith and in light of our human approach to things, it is foolish, because it doesn't make sense. The bargain is not fair. It's not squared up. We are not to present anything. We're not to help. We're not to do. We're merely to receive. The message of the cross means that we are to change fundamentally who we are and how we are to think. Many people want the peace and the comfort that comes from a relationship with the Lord, but they're not willing to give up their foundational beliefs. They're not willing to give up themselves in order to accomplish this. And it's foolish to think that I must give up of myself in order to gain something so wonderful. Jim Elliot, as I've quoted many times, says, it is foolishness to the world. It is folly to think that we can receive something that we cannot ever lose, and to do that we give up something that we cannot keep. We give up our lives, which we will never keep, in order to gain the eternal. The true doctrine of God, the true approach of the Lord, is the fact that the carnal world can be drawn to it, but at the same time repelled by it. Because it's drawn to it because it seeks what the Lord has provided and the relationship. But when it gets to the point of committing to it, the world is then repelled by it, because it means giving up our control. Giving up the control that we have. The wisdom of the world gives man the opportunity to be proud of his own accomplishment, to be pleased with what we have done. Look what we have done. I've used the illustration several times in the movie Castaway. Tom Hanks' character, he struggles and he finally is able to take the sticks and get fire going. And he has this huge fire there on the beach. And he dances around going, "Look what I have made. I have made fire." Well, he did produce it at that point, but the fire, the mechanism of the fire itself has been around a little while before that movie was made. But I love that. That's the way we approach. We do something and say, "Look what I have done." In a way, we're always going to be that 6-year-old bringing home the Vacation Bible School ice cream stick picture frame and saying, "Look what I have done." And it might be a little misshapen, it might be a little bit off, but our parents are proud of it, and it goes up on the wall because we're proud of what we have accomplished. And in some ways, our approach to the life as adults is the same way. We are producing this, but it's not really that good. But we're proud of it. Look what I have done. The message of the cross proclaims a different approach to the relationship with the Lord. It's not that I have accomplished something, I'm doing something, but rather, "Lord, I am a sinner. I have failed in what I have tried to do. I have tried to make myself better. I've tried to make myself more acceptable. I've tried to do better. I've tried to be more moral. I've tried to be a better person, a better husband, wife, father, son, mother, whatever. And I can't do it because of the nature that is in me." In verse 20, in this passage, if I can get my eyes to focus, "Where is the philosopher? Where is the scholar? Where is the debater of the age? Hasn't God made the world's wisdom foolish?" I have nothing against education and learning. I enjoy that. I enjoy philosophy. I enjoy discussing things of a scholarly nature. I was challenged when I was in seminary by reading some of the things that were kind of outside the scope of my limited knowledge at that time. I have no problem with that, but we have to look at them in terms of what they are providing and what they are bringing. It is the world's wisdom. It's the world's knowledge. And oftentimes these end not well. And they produce emptiness in lives, and people begin to question it because it is foolishness. He says, "Where is wisdom in the midst of all this?" Paul points out that wisdom does not come from just the search. It comes from the finding. It comes from the realization. It is only after he was willing, Paul, to humble himself before God that he found God. The search, philosophy is man's search for meaning. I think not religion, because religion is also man's search for meaning. But relationship is man finding meaning. And that's the huge difference. Many philosophers and scholars and all, we're on this constant search. I'm trying to find it. For those that walk in the path of faith and the path of the cross, that's the folly. you are searching for what is being asked, what's being offered to you, what's being given to you. It appears foolish to mankind because we hope that we can find enlightenment through thinking and philosophy or personal development or moving towards a higher state of grace or achieving something more and more in our lives. It is foolish to man that in order to gain the greatest gift that's ever been offered, he has to do nothing but receive the gift which was given to them. So many people refuse to hear the message of the gospel because they cannot bear the thought of not being in control. They cannot bear the thought of not being a part of the process. We've all known situations where we're trying to help a young person, child, do something, and they get very frustrated because we're trying to help them color inside the line. We're trying to help them stay in a certain way. We're trying to teach them a certain thing. Invariably, they will take the pen or the tool or the marker or whatever from our hands going, I'll do it myself. I know how to do it. They've watched us for 5 seconds. They know how to do it. We don't like the instruction. We don't like having to be subservient. We don't like having to learn. We think we know it all. We find it difficult to accept things that certain things are beyond us. We'll do it ourselves. We'll help. I will help you, Lord, by being a better person, by doing more things, by being more accomplished. Beyond our powers of comprehension, beyond our understanding and belief, there's a world of relationship that is open to us. And it is foolish to those who do not believe because it does not fit their model of what maturity and comfort and guidance and living is all about. Because it excludes them. It excludes them being in control. Number one, the Greeks searched for wisdom. That was their internal search. Great philosophers that we still read today, they searched for wisdom and felt by their noble deeds and exemplary lifestyle this could be found. The Jews searched for a sign, something that they could look to and say, this is it, in a nutshell. All the efforts of God through the years to show Himself and to reveal Himself to mankind have often been shunted aside because it was not acceptable. It was not in keeping with what we wanted. To accept salvation solely by grace was somehow insufficient. It was too simple. It was not complex enough. It was not including us enough. If we accept Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord, if we come to Him with a humble heart and repent of our sins and give unto Him our very being, pour ourselves out as a living sacrifice, what that does is keep us from being able to claim the credit. It keeps us from having pride in our accomplishments. It gives control to someone else. Paul points out the gospel was a stumbling block to the Jew. Rather than a step up, it was a stumbling block because they could not give in to this message that was being presented to them because they were so caught up in the message that they already had. We have all think some of that Jewish mindset, and we realize that the world is filled with the view that we don't need this. We're able to do it by force of our will, by our technology, by our understanding, by our wisdom. We'll figure it out. We often joke about when we get a new item, first thing we do is try to put it together without the instructions. we try to work it without going through the instruction book. And the first thing they tell you with these new items is read the instruction book. I am guilty of saying, I can figure this out. I know this. And about halfway through, you timidly and meekly go, now, what was step 4? What was step 5? Sometimes it's good to read the instruction book and not try to figure it out all for yourself. In our world today, so many people are trying to figure it out for themselves. Trying to be smart enough, good enough, moral enough, to learn enough, to read enough, to depend on science and technology and what others are telling us. And the message of the cross is sometimes foolish. But that folly is what saves us. That's the ironic part. The very thing we need the most is what we seek the least. So our response to this is, how do we balance human wisdom and faith? How do we balance what we have been given and what the Lord has given to us to use and the faith by which we walk? Knowledge is good, it is right, it is necessary in the improvement of the things that it brings to our life. We are not to be illiterate barbarians. We are not to be carnal, Neanderthal, non-educated people. That's not what the Lord's called us to be. Simply because we have faith in God, simply because we believe the message of the cross, does not divorce us from our intellect. Rather, I think in many situations, it enhances our intellect. What the world must realize is that all of our wisdom, all of our philosophy, all of our intellect, all of our teaching and technology and tools and computers and artificial intelligence, all of those things are wonderful, but they cannot help us in the deepest aspect of our human soul. The thing that foundationally changes a person is the impact of the grace of God and the Spirit of God upon their heart, upon their soul, upon their life. The difference comes from the changing of their being rather than from the changing of their actions. I wish everyone that through the years has said, I'm going to do better when it comes to anger or drugs or alcohol or abuse or any of the other things that we're caught up in. So many people, I'm going to do better. I'm going to determine to do better. I wish we could say that those were successful, but we know that they're not. No amount of wisdom will replace divine intervention. No amount of wisdom will replace the message of the gospel. No amount of wisdom will replace the changing of our heart. Newness comes into us. We approach the world differently. You will always meet people who believe that your faith, your relationship with the Lord is foolish. Some will say it's even superstition. It is a way to keep from having to face the reality of our life. And it's not worthy of their efforts. They will demean your belief and your approach to life. There's always going to be those folks. The cross means nothing to them because they do not understand the power of it. They've not experienced it for themselves. The cross is not a symbol. It is the focal point of our religion, of our understanding, of our approach to the Lord through the cross, through the message of the cross. That's why Paul says, for those who are perishing, the message of the cross is foolishness, but to those who are being saved, it is God's power. Where is our foundational beliefs at? Where is our focus at? How do we try to get through the day? We're not to feel that we are somehow superior to the unbeliever. We're not to feel that we're in some way above them in any moral or religious or empirical, within myself I am a better person standpoint. Rather, we should approach it with just the opposite. I realize how deficient I am and how much in need of the gospel I am. How do we bring a chorus of praise to the Lord for our salvation if we do not understand our salvation? If we don't understand our relationship, if we don't understand how critical it is to come to Him as a believer by faith, through His grace, drawn to Him in simplicity. The message of the cross. The folly of the cross is that it's foolishness to those who do not believe. To us it is the power unto salvation. Many people rely, and right now during these difficult times, and any time that life is hard, strive to find meaning. Strive to find something. What we have is the something that they need. What we are to present is not the institutional church. It is not, here's a way to live a life that is without blemish. Here is a way to come in and be accepted by those in your family and your friends. No, it is the message of the gospel unto their very core being, their existence. In those dark nights of the soul, when people are scared, when they're fearful, when they are wondering, when they are struggling to find meaning, their technology, their wisdom is not what's going to sustain them. It's the message of the gospel. It is grace and mercy and love. It is being brought into the family of God and given a new life, a new heart. Old things passed away, all things become new, so that even in those difficult times we hold on to the eternal truths of Scripture. We hold on to the eternal truth of the gospel. Where is your focus? Where is your trust? Where is your hope? In science and technology and those things that change? It's always interesting to me that 100 years ago, everybody believed the science of the day. And now we've shown that many of those things are disproved, or at least been supplanted by additional science. So in that very regard, we should see that what we look at as the end it all is merely a step toward the next thing. The progression of that. We're always going to be behind the curve of what truth and science is according to technology and wisdom. But the message of the gospel has been the same for 2,000 years. It is the power unto salvation. I pray as we go forth in these days and in every day in your life that what you possess is not wisdom, but grace and mercy and the love of God that moves in your heart each and every day. Hope you have a wonderful week. Pray that we get together as the church to celebrate very soon.